Hello there and greetings. Welcome back to Joy Sightings, edition number 42. Today I will read the introduction written by William E. Barton, who was Safed the Sage, to the book The Wit and Wisdom of Safed the Sage. William E. Barton was a congregational pastor about 100 years ago. And one of the things he did was edit and publish the denomination's Sunday school periodical. And in that periodical, he included these parables. Today I read The Bay Rum and On Being Independent and The Home of the Sparrow. But first, the introduction. I wish to express my own appreciation and that of Keturah for the very gracious words that come to us from readers of these parables. If they are fitted to add to the enjoyment of life, that in itself is worthwhile. If they teach some wholesome lessons and discover in common things suggestions of things spiritual, the author is doubly glad. Written week by week and made, like Keturah's suppers on the day the maid goes out of such things as are found in the cupboard, they are intended to teach their homely lessons of kindness, faith, and courage in terms that are easily intelligible. If now and then they contain a word too new to be found in the dictionary and popularly known as slang, it is to be remembered that Safed and Keturah are the parents of children who continue to contribute something to the education of their parents, and there is thought to be a value in relieving a style that might easily become monotonously solemn with a little element of piquancy. But it will not need to be said that no word is used that is known to have any coarse association. Many now thoroughly reputable words were once slang. In these parables, the sins and follies of life are intended to be treated with charity, and the simple and sterling qualities that make life worth living are sought to be constantly commended. If now and then these lessons provoke a smile, so much the better. We have been needlessly afraid of the word parable. All true teaching is by means of parables. We live in a world that would be totally dark but for 5 narrow windows of sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. Our emotions and aspirations and spiritual perceptions must all be expressed in words which were originally words of the 5 senses. We have constant need of being told not what the kingdom of heaven is, but what it is like unto. Any homely little incident that gives us a glimpse of spiritual realities is worth to us all that it can be made to express of truth and beauty. The kingdom of heaven is within. The sources of joy in human life lie close about us and in common things. Some of their meanings lie plainly on the surface and are immediately available, but there are deeper joys and larger lessons in common experiences if we know how to find them. Signed, Safed. The Bay Rum. Footnote by Phil. I take it that Bay Rum was a kind of bracing aftershave that stung the face. End footnote. I sat in the shop of a barber, and the barber cut my hair and trimmed my beard. And there came a seller of barber's supplies, and spake unto the barber, while the barber did things unto me. And the seller of barber's supplies spake thus, Behold, I have brought unto thee a sample of our new brand of bay rum, which I wish thee to try, and see if it be not more mild than any bay rum thou hast ever used. And the barber spake unto me, saying, Shall I try it on thee? And I said, Go to it. I will try anything once. And he put the new brand of bay rum upon my face and upon my neck. And he said unto me, How dost thou find it? Is it indeed mild? And I answered, Thou hast said it. It is so mild that I know not if it be bay rum or rain water. And the seller of barber's supplies answered and said, If thou must have it bite, I might have put in red pepper. And I said, Nay, I care not for the bite in itself, but it seemeth to me that the high cost of living hath hit the bay rum industry, so that the new brand hath come from Lake Michigan. And I said, Mildness is all right in its place. A little mildness now and then is relished by the best of men. But if I pay real money unto the barber, I desire that there be some evidence that he giveth me the real stuff, and not something out of the rainwater barrel. I would rather be hurt with something that is to do me good, than be mollified by that which shall harm me or profit me nothing. So I left the shop of the barber, and I went to mine house, and I sat me down to prepare wise words to speak to the people on the Sabbath. And it was in mine heart to speak unto them in all gentleness, for I love them, and they are very good to me. But I heard the voice of God saying unto me, Cry aloud, spare not, lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgressions, and this congregation their sins. And I did as God spake unto me, and I called them to repentance and a new life. And they said unto me, Now that was the way to preach. We desire sermons that have some punch in them. And I reflected that they would rather be hurt by that which was to do them good than be pleased with that which would harm them or profit them nothing. The next parable I'll read is on being independent. I have commented before that one of the delights actually in Safed the Sage's parables are that he used King James English, and in fact in a very affected style. Remember that these were written 100 years ago, and in using King James English, some of the ways that he referred to people here in this parable will not be regarded as correct in our society today. Note that when Safed speaks of African Americans, he never is unkind to them. I hope you can take this parable in the spirit that William E. Barton wrote it. On being independent. The Ethiopian maiden who worketh in the kitchen of Keturah sometimes singeth, and when she singeth not, then we know that something hath gone wrong. And there came a time when she sang not, and Keturah said, Peradventure she hath had another hard-luck letter from her home in the land of the south, and she must send them all her wages again. And the maiden came unto Keturah, and she wept much, and she said, Alas, my mistress, I must leave thee, for I am to be married. And Keturah asked her, Wherefore dost thou marry? And she said, I know not. For thou hast been most kind to me, and I never was so happy before. Yea, and my lord Sophed, I shall miss him, for I help him to hoe among the hollyhocks in the place where we go in the summer, where the lake is and the great pine trees. But this man loveth me. Yea, his mother and his sisters have besought him not to marry me, for I am black and comely, but to marry a yaller gal instead. I think she means yellow. And there is no nigger in these New-Nited States worth $7 a week to me. By that she means that she thinks it's worth it to stay employed for $7 a week rather than marry this guy. Yet hath he chosen me in preference to the yaller gal, and I have promised to marry him. Now when we heard this, I and Keturah, we wished that his mother and sisters had let him alone, for then peradventure he had married the yaller girl. So Keturah gave the maiden her blessing, and she departed very sorrowful. Then did Keturah go to a place called an intelligence office, though I know not why they called it so, and they sent unto her a long procession of maidens. The intelligence office is not the CIA, but would have been an employment bureau. And we suffered many things from many of them, and were nothing better, but rather worse. And Keturah sat down and mourned for the days when we were first married, when she did her own cooking, and when I split the wood for the kitchen stove. And I meditated much on how our prosperity had made us dependent upon servants, and upon the fragile comforts of these less strenuous years. Now I have traveled in far lands, even in Egypt and Arabia, and in the lands that border upon the great sea, and in Arabia they have a proverb which saith, He that hath a partner hath a master. This means that what you really get in a partnership is not a partner, but a master. He that hath a partner hath a master. So I gave heed, and made another proverb like unto it, and I pasted it upon the mirror of Keturah. And the proverb pertaineth not to women only, but to all who seek to be free from the cares of life by the possession of greater abundance. For it worketh not so. And this is the proverb that I made in the days when the Ethiopian had left us, and we had many candidates for her place. She that hath a servant hath a mistress. In other words, when you enter into a relationship to be the employer of a servant, you really get a boss. She that hath a servant hath a mistress. For no man can ever be independently rich, but a man might perchance be independently poor. I'll explain that one too. It takes people to become rich, so you aren't independent. But if you really were independent, you'd be poor. No man can ever be independently rich, but a man might perchance be independently poor. The home of the sparrow. There is a great city, and there runneth a street through the midst thereof, and on this side of the street, and on that are high buildings, and some of them are like unto the Tower of Babel. And one of those buildings is named for the man who discovered America. And upon the front of the building, even above the main entrance, and high above the sidewalk, is a graven image of Christopher Columbus. And I sat in that building beside a window that looketh out as if Christopher Columbus had stepped through it to where his image standeth. And it was winter, and the wind was cold, and the snow blew down the street. And under the garment of Christopher Columbus, and hard by one of his legs, was a sparrow. And he had found for himself a place about as snug and comfortable as any bird could find out of doors on that kind of a day. And he was sheltered from the wind and from the snow. And the sparrow was nigh unto the window, so that I might almost have put forth my hand and taken him inside. But he was better off where he was. And the sparrow saw me, and I saw the sparrow, and we looked long at each other, and neither of us was afraid of the other. And the sparrow said within his heart, It is for me that this building hath been erected, and this statue lifted high, with this cozy place for a shelter from the storm. To this end did Christopher Columbus cross the ocean, that he might have this building named for him, and that I might have shelter. Now when the bird spake thus in his heart, and I saw and understood the intent thereof, I did not chide the sparrow. For I myself have had just as little thoughts of the providence of God and the answers of my prayers as the sparrow. And while it was all very foolish, I'm not sure that it was as foolish as it would have been to stay out in the storm till the sparrow had learned for what other purpose Christopher Columbus crossed the ocean, or for me to question too curiously what larger meaning there may be in the providence of God. Then I said, O my God, I am of more value than many sparrows. But I do not know much more than they, and some men know less. The sparrow hath found her a house, and the swallow a nest, in the protecting shelter of thine altars. And they know not that those altars have any other use. I do not know much more about thy providences than that sparrow knoweth about Christopher Columbus. But I know that when the blast of the terrible ones, terrible experiences within God's providence, but I know that when the blast of the terrible ones is as a storm against the wall, thou dost keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. I'll read that sentence again without the footnote. I do not know much more about thy providences than that sparrow knoweth about Christopher Columbus. But I know that when the blast of the terrible ones is as a storm against the wall, thou dost keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee.